Hey guys, Thomas Silly Jr. here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Geostorm. So this movie has Gerard Butler playing Jake, who has built this satellite named Dutch Boy, which is this satellite that helps control and keep track of the weather, as well as uh, has maintenance aboard it, and so on and so forth. So while Jake's hanging out and doing stuff, an attack happens in Afghanistan where a bunch of people are frozen, and this leads to some guy, this unnamed guy, who takes this data chip up on this satellite and place it in a location, and it causes it to the ship to like malfunction, or a part of it, and the guy who placed the chip dies. So we cut back to this uncle guy of Jake, his brother, and Jake also has a daughter, and they're like visiting each other, and things are, typical, like, oh, things aren't perfect here, blah blah blah. Then we cut to Hong Kong, where this area is erupting. These areas are erupting, like these little fire tornadoes, or little fire things are just coming up and destroying stuff. So these two disasters sort of set off this whole idea that there's something going on up on the satellites that isn't really fit anything else. Meanwhile, the daughter wants Jake to stay, but he ends up moving into Florida, where he gets sent off into space. He's introduced to this team. Meanwhile, the brother is like making out with this secretary lady, who's like, oh, gotta keep things on the hush hush. Meanwhile, we see that the satellite is having issues, access is being turned off, and this guy who's in talkings with Jake's brother, Chang. This Chang guy mentions how all this is going to lead up to a geostorm, and as soon as he does his computer stuff and figures out what's going to happen, he is suddenly attacked by these government type guys who are wanting to kill him, but he's able to hide off up until that point. So while that's happening, Jake wants to scan everything on the ship when he makes it up there. Meanwhile, his brother is working with this other female coworker lady named Dana, I believe her name was. So Jake gets this call from the White House, and he ends up finding out that his brother ends up being in control of the situation there, which is something he didn't want at first glance. So meanwhile, Hong Kong is continuing to suffer. Its satellite goes nuts. The one that came back from Hong Kong, when they try to pull it in, I think it was the satellite. They pull it in and it goes nuts, and they're trying to figure out why that happened. They try to head outside of the ship, trying to get these two drives, and then Jake's fuel tank goes out of control. So this is what leads Jake to not tell the rest of the crew that he retrieved the chip, because he doesn't trust. He's not trusting anyone at this point. And the lady he's working with tells him that anyone with a level 3 access code, or whatever it is, could have been the culprit behind all these little incidences that have been happening. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the brother who got in contact with the Asian guy were supposed to meet up, but the Asian guy is killed by being shoved into the road by these government conspiracy guys. So the brother's future wife, or the lady secretary, is he'll say, she was gonna look into it afterwards. So meanwhile, Jake gets in contact with his brother, telling him some sort of story. And then he goes off to find Dana and cracks this secret code that Jake was actually sending. That, this has something to do with the government and stuff like that. So, Jake is able to find this virus via some other guy in the locker rooms where the first guy sort of placed it. So now we know for sure that, well, the characters, I should say, know at this point that somebody up there, or somebody on Earth, I should say, has been weaponizing the Dutch boy. And Jake automatically assumes that it is the president. Meanwhile, the satellite for the rest of Japan is going nuts and doing stuff and killing people. And other satellites are going off and killing other people via various storms and tidal waves and so on and so forth. So, one of the guys behind it wanted money and for the world to burn. He was one of the guys up on the ship who Jake so happened to figure out was him based off of something. I'm not really sure what it was, but he kind of just went after that guy, and then he happened to be the guy. So Jake stops him and then kills him. And we find out that, or Jake, I should say, finds out that the real person behind all of this is named Deckard, and this guy just wants to become president, and he's willing to go out and create this Geostorm to potentially stop or prevent terrorism, essentially, by using this Geostorm as a cover-up. So now we have the Geostorm happening in this countdown, even though natural disasters are already happening. So the Geostorm is technically already happening, so I'm not entirely sure what the countdown meant. If it reached 0 and that just meant it couldn't be stopped at that point, or enough of the world would be destroyed at that point. I'm not sure what the countdown was meant for, if the storm was already happening. So I don't know. Anyway, Jake's brother and the government lady are getting shot at by these bad government people because there is this government meetup where the president was doing his thing, and then the storm happened, and then they ran off, and then the bad guys knew that they had the info. So Jake has to stop this thing manually, while the guy responsible has this rocket launcher prepped up and shoots at the car that he assumes that the lady and everyone else and the president including was in, but they weren't. They got off in time. They again assumed that they would be there, and somehow the main bad guy ended up being tracked somehow, which allowed them to arrest him and have super mega majority cops have him arrested a necessary amount. Meanwhile, the code is put in and the storms are turned off. But this was only possible because the female captain that was with Jake the entire time was able to get him into that area where he was able to put the code in. So he turned off the weapon, Geostorm, and that got them, and they managed to also get off the ship via this little pod, and they are able to get tracked in by this other ship that just happened to be leaving earlier, but it fell behind, so it was able to catch them, I guess. I don't know. So Jake and his brother and his daughter all hang out, and that is. And they talk about, ridiculously enough, how Jake is actually going to go back up there and start rebuilding this Dutch boy, or whatever they're going to end up calling it, even though that's probably going to lead to somebody else weaponizing it. And that was Geostorm. It was ridiculous. It's your typical natural disaster film with the whole political angle attached to actually the majority of the movie, and the actual Geostorm itself is only like, what, 5% of the movie, maybe even less than that. So yeah. And there was a lot of conveniences and a lot of things to help this movie stay afloat, and not even all the pieces fit together properly, but, whatever. If I were to give this movie a score, I think I would give it like a 3 out of 10. It's just, this movie kind of falls apart. There are too many variables of weirdness going on that's just never really explained. And, it's just, it's not that great of a movie, but whatever. Anyways, if you enjoyed this review / rant, if you want to call it that, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and also feel free to check out my Patreon in the link in the description, and if you want to donate anything, please feel free to. It'll help a lot since YouTube doesn't want to monetize videos like mine. So, until next time, everyone, bye!